welcome back to my channel. So in today's video I'm going to be talking about my favorite books to read, some book recommendations, and I'm also going to go into a little detail about the book that I published, my poetry book called Dark Ink and Whispers. For those of you who don't know I published a book, I will leave the link down below for you to go and purchase it if you wish to do so. And if you do wish to do so, thank you so much because it means a lot to me. I'm also going to go into depth about the current novel that I'm working on. Lots of you have been asking me questions about it, and I don't want to go into too much detail because I'm very superstitious about my writing process. I don't really like to give out too much information, but I think I have come up with a title name for my new novel, and I'd like to know what you guys think about it. So without any more blabbering, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. So I feel like books are something that are somewhat obsolete nowadays due to the addiction of technology and social media. I personally am not a huge fan of what technology has done to the world, but I do feel like it can be a gift if you use it to your disposal properly, which is what I'm trying to do by making videos and stories and all kinds of stuff about the positive and the good things in life rather than just starting drama or getting myself trapped in the whole world of internet, social media life. So that's why I chose to talk about books today, because I feel like it's a great way to escape social media and the internet world and just get away from all the negativity on the news, and maybe even in your personal life. Reading a book is a great way to escape from that, besides watching a movie. For me, the book is always better. There's a reason why they say that, and it's because it's true. Most of the time the books, compared to the movies that are made into them, have a lot more detail, and you get a whole different perception whenever you read the book versus watch the movie or TV show. So I'm just going to give you guys a few examples of my favorite books and what they're about. So first of all, you gotta go with a classic. Catcher in the Rye. I know it might sound kind of cliche. Some of you may have even read this in school. I know I did. It's just a classic, and it's one of my all-time favorite books. Definitely top 3. It's about a boy named Holden, and he's kind of a troublemaker, kind of lost, just kind of going through life. It's set in, I believe, like the 20s or 40s. I don't remember. It's been a while since I read it. But he's kind of just flowing through life, and it's just about him letting go of childhood and realizing that it's okay to grow up, and that growing up maybe isn't always so bad, and just kind of his transition from being a boy into becoming an adult, and as he sees everyone around him growing as well, he kind of learns to adapt to that, which is something that I've always struggled with personally. I've never wanted to grow up, but I guess in some ways no one ever has, right? So it's a very eye-opening book, and back in its day it was known to be very promiscuous and vulgar because of the language and some of the scenes that are described in it. Nowadays it's probably nothing compared to some of the other stuff that people read or see on TV. But back in the day, it was pretty, bad. And just to see the transition from something back then to now and the differences is kind of astonishing, honestly. But it's a great book, and I guess there's a reason why it's a classic. Some people may not like it. I've heard from some people that they find it very boring and slow, but everyone has their own interpretations of books. So now for number 2. So I'm not sure if this is my second favorite book or my first favorite. It's kind of a tie between this one and Catcher in the Rye. They're both placed at number 1. So this book is called Looking for Alaska by John Green. I know a lot of you have probably heard of John Green. He wrote The Fault in Our Stars and all those, other books that were later made into movies. Looking for Alaska is a lot different than some of his other novels. There's just so much depth to it. It's considered young adult, but I feel like you could be a grown adult, you could be 80 years old and still find something in this book to connect to that means a lot to you. I have read this book probably maybe 4 times. It's in some ways similar to the whole concept of Catcher in the Rye, but it has more meaning to it other than just adapting to the idea of growing up. So Looking for Alaska is about this boy named Miles who gets sent to this boarding school, and it's his idea. He wants to go to the boarding school. He tells his parents, I go to seek a great perhaps. And so he goes to this school. He was always kind of a weird kid, kind of odd, and he ends up making friends at this school, and he comes across this girl who he befriends named Alaska. Alaska's very outgoing, very mysterious. She is a very in-depth character, I should say. She has a troubled past, but she doesn't let that affect her. And she's a very troubled character is what I should say. So he becomes friends with Alaska. He ends up falling in love with her, of course. But not in the way you might think. He falls in love with her mysteriousness, her unknowingness, the idea of her. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I won't tell you what happens. But it's not what you expect, I'll tell you that. It might start out kind of slow, but if you keep reading it, you're going to be pretty surprised about what happens at the end. And once you do, it just your mind just opens up to a whole new world, because it's so different than what you think is going to happen. And then once it does happen, you're just you don't know how to feel. I cried for sure. They also made a TV show on Hulu about Looking for Alaska. I watched the whole thing, and it was actually pretty brilliant. Very, very similar and close to the book, other than a few small details here and there. But I feel that the characters they chose for the Hulu show represented the characters in the book fairly well. That book it's great. I've read some of other John Green's books, like Fault in Our Stars, which is way better than the movie, by the way. They make the movie all about romance and sappiness, but the book is so much more. It's about life and learning to accept yourself, as well as, falling in love. So I feel like the movie for The Fault in Our Stars was a little... But, with that being said, some of his other books are good as well. But Looking for Alaska, to me, it just tops it. Tops every other book he's written, at least so far, from what I've read. So, those are probably my top 2 favorite books. I have tons and tons, but those are the ones that I always recommend to people, because I feel like no matter who you are, what age you are, you can connect to them in some sort of way. One of them is new age, one of them is classic, so I feel like it's a good variety for people who are looking for recommendations to start out with. Another great book to read if you're into mysteries is The Cellar. It's about a girl who gets kidnapped and put in the cellar with these other girls, and they were all kidnapped by the same man, and they try to figure out how to get out and what is exactly wrong with the man. He's pretty creepy. He calls them all by different flowers. So each one of them is Lily and, Rose, and they all have different flower names, although those aren't even their real names. That's just what their kidnapper calls them. It's a pretty good book. The author was discovered on Wattpad, and she got very lucky and got picked up right away, and she writes tons and tons of great books now. I haven't read any of her other books, but I did like The Cellar. That one was really good. It was pretty popular when it first came out as well, so some of you may have read that. Right now I'm actually reading a book. It's called Ghost of Harvard. I don't know what it's really about yet, but I do know it's about a girl who goes to college where her brother went, where he killed himself due to schizophrenia. And while she's there, she starts to become obsessed with her brother's suicide. And I guess she starts to see things or hear things herself. That's just what the summary has said anyways. I don't know yet, but I will let you know once I'm finished reading it. Although it is a pretty large book, so it might take me a little while. But aside from that, I would now like to go into my poetry book that I have published on Amazon called Dark Ink and Whispers. Now this is the old cover. This was my first draft. I have since then updated the cover, made it look a little better, and I also fixed a few errors that I had written and didn't notice inside of the book. So some people are into poetry, others are not. It all varies on the type of person. It's not a very large book, as you can see. It's, I think, like 30 something pages, 32 pages. But it means a lot to me to say that I have published something. I have not sold a whole lot of copies due to the fact that I self-published and you have to be able to promote yourself. But those who have bought it have had nothing but nice things to say about it, which it means the world to me to hear. For me, this poetry is not just a bunch of words, you know, it means a lot to me. I wrote it for a reason, and every single poem that I have written I have related to or gone through or dealt with, and I would just like to see if other people possibly connect with that as well, which is one thing I really love about poetry, is that the interpretation you can get from it versus reading a novel is so much more vast than than the average book. You can take words and metaphors and everyone will see something different from it, and that's why I wrote this, because it kind of gives an insight of me and who I am, as well as the way others may feel, and in some ways makes us connect as a human being, you know, that we're all not alone and we often feel the same even if we don't know it. So that's my book, Dark Ink and Whispers. I will leave the link down below for those of you who are interested in purchasing it. I really greatly appreciate it, like I said. But aside from that, I would now like to talk about my novel that I'm writing. A lot of my friends have been asking me, what is your novel about? How much have you written? And so forth. Well, I don't really want to talk too much about what it's about, but I will say that it's, so far, I feel like it's maybe a mystery, slash young adult. The main character's name is Ivy, and she's in college, and her friends end up getting into a situation that no person ever feels that they should be in. You have to use your imagination while reading it. It's not a very straightforward book, which is why it's taking me so long to write, because there's a lot of depth to it, a lot of hidden details that you will or may not notice the first time you read it, that I have to go back and double check and confirm to make sure everything lines up. It's one of those kind of books that really make you think, and it's a book that I've been meaning to write for so many years, and I have written draft after draft about it, and I feel like now I'm finally getting it right, which is another reason why it's taking so long. So, like I said, I can't go into too much depth about what it is. But with that being said, I do have a few ideas for the title. My first idea is called Caught in Ivy. As you know, the main character's name is Ivy, so take that as you will. So there's Caught in Ivy, that's my first choice, and then my second choice is Thistle and Ivy, or Thistle in Ivy, either or. So yeah, take those title options and think of them as you will. And I would also love to hear which title option you think is best, because I am rather stuck on which one to choose, although I don't have to choose yet. I have plenty of time. I have finally chosen those ones after a very long time of trying to figure out a title. So if you can go ahead and leave me a comment or send me a message, or however you want to contact me, and just let me know which title sounds more interesting to you. If you were to go into a bookstore and see one of those titles, which one would make you want to read that book more? And that would mean a lot to me. So yeah, that was all I really wanted to talk about today, was books. If you guys have any book recommendations for me, please let me know. I have a wide variety for book themes that I love to read. I'll read pretty much anything as long as it's fiction. I don't really care so much for nonfiction unless it's like Joan Didion or Susanna Kaysen, stuff like that, but mostly just fiction. And if you guys would like any more book recommendations, I know this one's kind of short, I just wanted to throw it out there. If you would like to hear more book recommendations, whether it's mystery or young adult or so forth, feel free to leave a comment or ask me about it, and I will do my best to give you any advice and book recommendations that I can, for those of you who actually still read books, which I'm hoping is more of you than I think. But yeah, so have fun reading, guys, and let me know what you think. Bye!
Train just left this town while I'm slowly heading